Welcome to the Track to AI podcast, your guide for AI and tech solutions, powered by Shay2. I'm your host, Amber Amordiki, and I speak with experts about how AI can be a tool for companies, not a replacement for employees. From AI integration to practical use cases, you'll get the clarity you need to make smarter decisions for your company. If you're ready to learn about AI solutions that actually work, well, you've come to the right place. It's time to get on track. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Amber Amordigi. If you haven't done so already, and I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but I'm not going to stop saying it until you guys do it. Please share and follow the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, all the places. Wherever you prefer to listen or watch this show, go ahead and click that follow button if you haven't already. And of course, share it with your network, your friends, your family, whoever. Also, we are still offering a free Gartner report to you, dear listener, dear viewer. It's all about the 5 best practices for CIOs leading AI change at their organizations. It's also very insightful for people who aren't CIOs. It's also free. So you can go to www.tracktoaipodcast.com to download that report today. All right. Today, if you couldn't tell by the episode title, we're talking about AI bias in recruiting. We're talking about recruiting inclusivity. And I'm sure if you haven't heard already, AI, it's screening millions of applications every single day worldwide. Some candidates don't even know it. Meanwhile, companies are hiring faster than ever, and they're saving more money using these tools. Not a bad thing. But many of these companies have yet to ask a very important question. How fair are the AI tools that they're using? How fair are they when it comes to vetting these applicants? And when the AI is showing a clear bias, who's to blame for that? Well, luckily, today's guest has these answers and more. So let's get into it. My guest today is Dr. Zusan Osmani. She's a strategic success manager at SAP SuccessFactors. Dr. Osmani focuses on the intersection of technology, culture, and inclusivity. She's also a member of UN Women Germany, and we're going to get into that later in the conversation. She's also the author of a book called Business English for HR Managers, which is available now, and she has a new book coming out. It's in German, so the rough translation is How We Can Create a Good Learning Culture. That's going to come out May 18th, and she may have an English translation eventually. We are so happy to have you here today, Dr. Osmani. Welcome to the Track to AI podcast.
Hi, Amber. Thanks for having me in your podcast. I'm very enthusiastic to have a great discussion with you on the different topics you mentioned, AI in recruiting, and the importance of inclusion and diversity in the context of AI during the recruiting processes. And yeah, happy to be here.
Amazing. Yeah, no, we're going to get into all of that. And I do want to hear a little bit more about your story. But right now, you live in Germany. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know much about German cuisines outside of pretzels and schnitzel, bratwurst, maybe. I'm not really a fan of bratwurst, to be honest. I want to know, what is your favorite dish or favorite food in Germany?
My favorite dish is potato salad. It's a very typical German food, which is between main dish and side dish. And it's made up with potatoes, and you can also choose different sauces, but most of them, which will be created, are with mayonnaise. And it's a heavy dish. But yeah, for sometimes for cheating days, you can try that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we have potato salad here, but that sounds similar. But yeah, curious to see the German take on it. All right, diving into our conversation today, I want to know about the first time you ever heard about AI. And did you ever imagine it would play such a huge role in your profession today?
Actually, it was like approximately 4 years ago during my switch to SAP from my former company. And we realized how processes were focusing more in including AI. And it was very new to us because we had like typical recruiting processes, as many companies have. So, different steps which their candidate has to come through, and also from the internal part. We had a first touch with one of a smaller software solution. It was not ChatGPT as we know it now, but it was someone who has internally developed it. And then we saw how we can automate some steps which were normally done by us in a manual way. Yeah, on the first side, we were very excited and I thought about how we can automate processes, but it was very new to us. I always compare the first run with AI with the first steps we had, or the first touch we had in former times with the internet. It was very new to us. We were very excited to use it. It was completely a new adventure, but in the same way, we were a bit frightened what it will mean to us and for our world. And today, it's a pillar of our life.
Yeah, it's such a game changer. And I like that you pointed out the excitement, but then also a little bit of the fear behind it of like, what can this become? What can this be used for? And also, of course, comparing it to uh, when the internet first started and people had a lot of fear about that. Even I recall people having fear about purchasing things online, using their credit cards online. So yeah, I think AI, it will become a necessity sooner rather than later, similar to the internet. Switching gears, I do want to touch a little bit of your backstory. So, you were born in Afghanistan and you moved to Germany with your family when you were very, very young. You grew up in Germany, you built a career, and now you advise companies on HR transformation. So, I want to know, how did those experiences shape your perspective on what inclusivity means in the workplace?
Thank you for that question. So I think my definition is very personal because yeah, it was like about 2 or 3 months when my parents came to Germany with my sister. But I experienced what it feels like to be underestimated somehow because of your capabilities or because of language or background assumptions. So when you grow up, you realize that you are not from the other appearance and also from your background, and you're different. So I would say so. So for me, inclusivity isn't just about representation. It's really about access. So who actually gets a fair chance to be seen or to be heard and to grow. Currently, Germany is a very multicultural country, I would say, but it differed during the times we came to Germany. And that times we hadn't that diversity like we know it now. But that's one pillar of my life during my career, that this topic of diversity and inclusion becomes more important, not only for my personality, but also for all the people living together. I also had the chance during my studies to live in New York for a couple of time, and it was an amazing experience for me because there I saw so much diversity and how it works, and so that was like a kind of mirror for me to say it is possible and we can do that, and that's why I wanted always to integrate it also in my scientific studies, to put diversity and also, for example, skills diversity into the daily businesses to open chances for everyone. Because I know how the path is when you have a migrational background. And yeah, I think when you have the access, and also in Germany, we have for the talent acquisition and also for in terms of skills, some areas where we need are really the skill set of people who are not currently in Germany, for example. And I would say if we give the people the chances to be good in the areas they are, so we will be successful globally. And because we are in a globalized world, so how it can be that we won't help each other. So we have to create synergies during the countries and also during the daily life. So I think it's a good way to make life easier for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's pretty wild in the year 2026 we're still talking about, you know, bias towards people who are like you said, quote unquote different from the norm wherever they are in the world, whatever that norm looks like, and not giving people a chance based on their talents, but here we are having that discussion. And I do want to ask you just to kind of, you know, ground this conversation. What are some of the common poor AI biases that you've seen, whether a company even knows that their AI tools are doing this, whether they have well intentions, but it's more of like an ignorance, they're just not educated in this. What are these AI tools doing that they are excluding certain candidates?
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. So bias and AI is a big topic for many companies. I would say they underestimate how complex it is because a responsible approach means you don't just check once and move on, and you have to question the system. So that means to include like looking at the data you train on. So analyzing who gets filtered out, and for example, also checking if outcomes differ across different groups. And we have to consider also how to ensure the fairness. There's no such things as completely unbiased systems, but companies can actively test for bias. So you can remove sensitive or proxy data where it is possible, and also involve like different perspectives in the process. So it's really about being intentional and not assuming neutrality. I would say AI is a pillar which can help us in the process, but we shouldn't like focus on it on a single manner. So the whole process in recruiting, it's a bit people business. So the emotional part and also the human being is on the front line. So we need to use AI to help the hiring process, but do not focus only on the output what we receive.
Yeah, and that definitely leads me into my next question. You know, you said AI is a pillar, it's not necessarily a human replacement solution. When is it time for AI to hand it over to human hiring managers for that human judgment?
AI should support decisions, but not make them. So it's great at handling volume, for example, spotting patterns and being consistent, but it doesn't understand the context the way humans do. So when should AI hand it over? So the moment things get nuanced, so to say. So when you're looking at potential instead of just past experience or unconventional career paths, for example. So sometimes when you check the CV, you have open questions. Take them and use them for the job interview, for example. When you have the first screening through AI, and the candidate fits totally to the job description, but you have afterwards questions. Do not let the AI just do the whole process for you. These are parts where we have to talk to the candidates, and at the end, we do not hire a machine, we hire people. So we need to understand them and also see if they fit to the culture of the company. So sometimes you have wonderful CVs, but the person behind is not matching your culture, for example. And also the otherwise part is often the case that you have like not the completely job profile you will look for, but there's a great personality behind and the willingness and the motivation and what helps you to grow within the company. So I think the human component is so important. So AI can guide us, but it shouldn't decide, and that's where human judgment becomes essential. So that's I would say the most important point. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I think gets overlooked, and it's that on paper, a candidate can look amazing, like they can fit the role perfectly, it seems. But it's not really until you get to sit down and talk to them, or you have a phone call with them, or a video call with them, where I feel like the real vetting starts sometimes. And I do really appreciate how you mentioned, a candidate might not have all the qualifications per se, but if they do move on to that next step, the hiring manager can see, okay, this person is willing and they're able to learn X, Y, and Z. They have a great attitude. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think AI can read that, can pick up on that. It's only looking for, I guess, whatever the company programmed it to look for, whether that is keywords in their application and whatnot. I do want to talk a little bit more about the beginning of this type of AI tool when a company is starting to use it. I know you mentioned earlier that they can't just do like one checkup and, okay, we're clear to use this now. They have to constantly test it. And that does, it seems, start at the very onset of adopting these tools. What are some other tips that you can give company leaders when they want to start using AI to help with their recruiting process? What are some more things that they should be considering and they should be testing their AI with?
Yeah, very interesting point. So what I'm currently seeing during my experience and career is that a lot of companies are using AI currently to speed up things and screening CVs, for example, matching candidates and automating communications. That makes sense. But where it goes wrong is when companies start trusting the output without questioning. So AI is only as good as the data and assumptions behind are. So if you don't understand how it's making decisions, you're basically outsourcing judgment, and that's risky, I would say. And a tip is, for example, to see what kind of transformation journey the company is planning. So, what is the goal with AI and how they want AI to support them? And for the companies who want to start, for example, AI in their HR transformation or in the pillar of recruiting, for example, it should be a good chance to find also, apart from the bias, the candidates and make or give people the chance to get a response, because sometimes and often in Germany that's the case from my experience that the bigger companies have really a mass of incoming CVs, and the time for checking them is very rare. So sometimes recruiters have like 3 seconds to check one CV and screen them. And sometimes then they have not the time to respond in a, I would not say friendly, but like take the time to get back to the candidate and tell them, for example, why it didn't fit that time or what is very important for the candidate. So they receive an automated response why it didn't work out. And sometimes the candidates do not understand it because sometimes the job which was offered is already in an internal process, for example, or they have already hired someone but forget to put up the job description or the job offer offline from the website. So sometimes these are like tiny, small parts from the departments to focus on. because that's important for the whole candidate journey. So to make the process easier for HR and also for the candidates, we have to see to do not forget the human component. So it's a very tricky topic because you have to see what is important currently for a company, what is important for the progress you want to make and grow with AI, but also do not forget the culture behind the company.
We're going to take a short break, but coming up next, who's responsible when AI gets it wrong? Plus, Dr. Osmani's work with UN Women Germany. Stay tuned.
Shitu's Track to AI framework helps businesses adopt AI easily. In just 8 steps, you can unify data silos, maximize your ROI, and increase employee buy-in. Our experts will create a custom plan designed for your AI. Click the link in the show notes to learn more.
All right, the ad is over. It is time for the bad joke of the week. What do you do to get a robot mad? You push all of its buttons. Wow, yeah, saying that out loud. It's so bad, guys. I'm sorry. Not sorry. All right, moving on. So, we've heard of cases where AI screening tools they do discriminate against minorities and marginalized groups of candidates. And I feel like you touched on this in your last answer, Dr. Osmani, but I really want to drive this point home to any company leaders who are listening right now. Who is ultimately accountable when their AI recruiting tools get it wrong and they do show bias?
It's important to understand that AI is a tool what we can use, and the user behind is the company, and we as a user who try to include it in our daily businesses. So we have to keep the human being in the loop to be transparent. So we have also the responsibility to see if we consider the bias or what the outcome is. So if AI is part of our decision making, you have to be transparent about it. So not necessarily in a super technical way, but people should understand that AI is being used and roughly how it influences the outcome. So we are responsible for the outcome. We can use AI as good as we want and as good as we gives AI the information and the data, because AI is growing with that what we are giving to the AI tools. So we have to be very sensitive also and very transparent and what we put in the system, so to say.
All right, Dr. Osmani, I want to talk about your work with UN Women Germany. If you could briefly describe what it is that you do with them and how that advocacy connects to HR and the AI work that you do.
The work with young women is always about fairness and access, and that's also a very important component which aligns with my professional work. So, with young women, the focus is on gender equity and also broader human rights principles. And that's what we have also in our daily business. So, systems are not neutral. And so, we have to actively design them in a way that creates equal opportunities, not only in the area of the daily life and in our private lives, but also in the business life. So I always see how aligned the work from young women and what I said about fairness and access is very similar. What whether we use AI in HR, for example, when we use AI in a positive way and in a fairness way with putting the data we give access to people, for example, during the recruiting process. And I would say, so whether it's AI in HR or in my human rights work, it's always about opening doors for people. In business, it's very, very important to have this intuition to understand for example, how someone fits the role, how someone is or has a variety of skills. That sometimes we start in a specific HR role, and during the stages of our career, we see more skills we have. And we have then to see, okay, this person is, for example, better in another role because the skill set has grown also. And when we focus on AI, for example, we say in a couple of years, some of the roles we know currently in HR won't be in the same stage because we have developed AI during the stages. And we always say 2 years of AI is like 30 years in our human life. So it's a very fast growing procedure. So we have to check on the skill sets we have in our companies, and also for the companies who are currently on the skills based processes or transformation journey. That's a very important point to let the people internally grow, because AI becomes a very strong pillar of our business life, but we cannot forget the people who are currently working in these roles. It's a very broad topic, so we can talk like for hours. But yeah, I hope that I could give you some insight on how that 2 points align with each other.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. They really do go hand in hand with one another. And that's amazing that you're able to take the work that you do every day and put it in a different arena, different but similar arena. That's amazing. Well, Dr. Osmani, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Track to AI podcast. It was truly lovely to speak with you.
Thank you very much for having me, and it was a great discussion with you. So happy to be here.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, and go ahead and share it with your network. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Track to AI Podcast, using the number 2, of course. And to sign up to our email list, you can visit www.tracktoaipodcast.com. Until next time, stay in the know and get on track.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the guest are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Shay2 Inc., its management, or employees. Listeners should not solely rely upon the information provided and should consult appropriate professionals for advice tailored to their individual specific needs. Neither the host, guest, nor Shay2 Inc. make any warranties, expressed or implied, regarding the information provided.